This is Nice Work. I'm Tyler Lake, and I'm here with Nice Work contributor Danny William. Danny, thanks for coming in.
No problem. I'm excited because we're talking about Boots Riley's new movie, I Love Boosters, which came out last weekend. But I got to see an early screening when he came to Bloomington back in early April.
Oh yeah, that was at the IU Cinema. How was it?
It was amazing. It was one of my favorite movies of the year so far.
Oh, that's awesome. Did you happen to catch his chat at the art school with our colleague, Alex Chambers?
No, I missed it, and I really wish I could have heard it.
Danny, you're not gonna believe this.
You guys recorded it?
Yeah, okay, I guess it's not that hard to believe.
No, but I am very excited to hear it.
Me too. We have that, story about Pillar Arts, and stories about how we find community. Coming up on Nice Work, after this. This is Nice Work. I'm Tyler Lake. Boots Riley is the writer and director of one TV show and 2 movies. The latest is I Love Boosters. It's in theaters now. Before he was a director, Boots started the hip-hop group The Coup. He was the lead singer and wrote the vocals. He's also been a labor organizer and, since he was a teenager, an activist. The IU Cinema invited Boots to visit for a screening of I Love Boosters, and he sat down with Nice Work host Alex Chambers. They talked about making movies versus making TV, and about how one might go about creating a show that gets people to join a political organization. We also got an impressive capsule history of the American left in the 20th century. Here's Alex Chambers at a live talk with Boots Riley.
All right. Well, Boots, thanks so much for coming to Bloomington. So glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I wanted to start with a question about your trajectory from Sorry to Bother You to I'm a Virgo to I Love Boosters. Sorry to Bother You, your first film is about Cassius Green, who becomes a telemarketer because he needs cash. This is his nickname. Realizes that the company he's working for, there's a lot. I mean, I'm not going to say everything, but
okay.
You know, don't worry. You guys got to see it. Realizes the company he's working for is a mega corporation that's doing horrible things, unsurprisingly. I'm a Virgo is a delightful TV series about a 13-foot-tall 19-year-old who has to deal, among other things, with a superhero villain guy and just being out in the world in Oakland. Yeah. You spent a lot of time developing those 2 projects. What did you feel like was missing from those that you felt like you wanted to address with I Love Boosters?
I mean, I could answer that in a lot of different ways, but the truth is, I wrote I Love Boosters, I'm a Virgo, and then a couple of my next projects kind of all at the same time. Uh-huh. So it wasn't like necessarily trying to fill a gap. But yeah, I think with Sorry to Bother You, you know, you're always coming up with ideas of things that you can do, things that work, you know, just technically, like when he's sitting there and there are papers flying behind him, which I had to really fight for because it took us like a long time to get those papers flying, and everybody's like, well, are you really gonna fight to do this? You know, and so we did it, and we finally were getting it, and I was like, I didn't want to let that go to waste. I wanted to be more impactful, so I was like thinking what the next scene would be, and so then we came up with the thing of, you know, having him look over and say, what does he say? You're gonna just eat all of those things? So, you know, that came like in the moment, and then it worked so well that then I started doing it in other things as I'm writing the other stuff, thinking about how I could do that. And you'll probably see a lot of that in I Love Boosters. So those are, you know, you get ideas from that, but I don't think it came from lacking something. I do know that with I'm a Virgo, I really realized what I suspected was that I don't like TV, right? I like stories to end. I like stories. I like to make decisions based on what I think is best, as opposed to, can you have this character say that line instead of that character? Because we don't want to pay that actor for that episode, you know. With I'm a Virgo, we cut anywhere, depending on how you think of it, from 40 to 60% of the script we cut out 2 weeks before we started shooting.
Wow.
And
that was because of people
that was
from on
because,
high talking about.
Well, no, it was just budget. It was just things being calculated wrong, and then you have to look for things to cut. And so we cut out. There was 15 minutes more of story after what we saw at the end. There was a whole episode that had no dialogue, that was just the power plant, quote unquote, heist thing, just all action. There was a whole foray into sports in episode 2. A lot of things that really had to do with how I felt things should move, but also who I thought we should get to know. And so there were all these things that happened that were somewhat arbitrary, and I made certain choices over others of what to keep and what not to keep, because at this point, to get even what we got on screen, there was like me just threatening to quit a lot.
It's what you got to do.
Yeah.
On some level.
And I realized, though, that I had first been doing it under certain assumptions, and then, you know, but by the time we got closer to it, I had already finished I Love Boosters, and then what will be my next movie. So I'd already finished the script.
Writing it.
Yeah, I'd already finished writing it while we were in prep for I'm a Virgo. And so then I was a little bit more invested in, okay, I got to get somebody to fund I Love Boosters. So I was like, okay, well,
so
here's the things we can cut.
Make it work.
Right. But it was also, I was like, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to have the black box theater piece. Because there was a different group of cuts that could have been more action and things like that. And so I figured if I cut those out, that maybe I could talk them into going back and shooting it later.
Yeah.
But then I think we did such a good job at the bubbling skin, that, because at first that was on the table, maybe we can shoot all this other stuff, but then they were like, oh, that's cool, you know.
Right, exactly.
That was you know, I think I was more interested in going back to telling one person's story.
Okay.
So I think a lot of my stuff, even though it is an ensemble piece, I don't know what that means, because it's really a person's story. A movie version of I'm a Virgo would have cut out maybe some stuff, and I think that's fine. I think that, I don't know, I think we got used to watching TV so much that we just want everybody to have their own episode and stuff, and we start looking at movies that way. And I don't know, that's just not the kind of thing that I want to do.
The main thing that I really want to understand more deeply is thinking about how you've thought throughout your whole career or work life about the connection between making art that's hopefully going to find an audience and be, you know, it's funny and it's like weird and entertaining and good stories. And then also your music has been, you know, just great to listen to, but also what you already said, you know, even just today, about wanting to do something that's going to spark people to actually get involved somehow. And so I'm curious, you said at one point in an interview that, you know, I mean, even Star Wars, George Lucas thought of that as a critique of American empire, and it's, you know, as common as drinking water. There have not been any political movements as a result of that. So what is it that could allow a piece of art, ideally, you know, to get people moving in some way beyond just sitting there and watching it and saying, that was fun? Yeah,
and it's in what I do, and it's something that I've honed over the years making music, is one, okay, try to put this in
this is like a lifetime question, but.
So, starting with the new left, including the radical left, started running away from class struggle, right? And focusing on spectacle. What had been and I'm going to use gross generalizations here, and there are exceptions to the rule, but I only have a little bit of time. So in the 20s and 30s in the United States, there were, according to the documentary Seeing Red, there were 1 million card-carrying communists in the United States, right? There were all, and by card-carrying, I mean in the Communist Party. So obviously you expand that to all their friends and family and the people that supported them, and the 20s and 30s people were, for the most part, they were out. They hadn't started going underground yet. When you had a demonstration at the time, you had things anywhere ranging from tens of thousands to 100,000 people having demonstrations, but they called it a demonstration because you'd have sections of industry demonstrating their power. Here's all these people that could shut down your industry. And that's where the connection to the idea of demonstration. The demonstration wasn't the be all end all. This was a threat of a possible strike, of something that we could do. Obviously there had just been the Russian Revolution. There were all sorts of things going on all over the world. In that context is when you had the biggest liberal reforms in the United States, the New Deal, right? That and the Civil Rights Movement are the two biggest, right? And it came because of a threat of withholding labor, a threat that had to do with capital, a threat of that being able to be a growing revolutionary movement. During, what became World War II, communists in the United States were on the side of the international, of the Comintern, and saying, we need to get the United States into the battle against fascism. And part of the agreement was, if the U.S. went to war, people here went to war against Hitler, people here weren't going to continue to try to make a revolution during that time. So you had the biggest group of radicals in the United States go underground. And all of a sudden they were progressive and not revolutionary, not communist. They were even liberal. And so you flash forward, again, I'm gross generalizations. You go 12 to 15 years forward, and you're having the House Un-American Activities Committee point to people saying, they're not progressive, they're communists. They're lying to you. And at the time, they were. But however, if you looked at 20 years before, you had movements where people were openly communists, helping people stop evictions or helping to organize unions. At the same time, obviously, there were also purges and unions of communists. So there was this fight going on. That combined with the critique of Stalin and the questions of what the Communist Party USA did in response to that, you had this big split going on. Mind you, communists decided to say, I plead the fifth and stuff like that. That's what the Communist Party was. That House American Activities Committee only stopped later on when communists said, you were communists, right? And they said, okay, this might get that popular. So they stopped that. That happened when it got to San Francisco. Now, in the wake of these groups dissolving, a lot of those folks formed other organizations that we would call the New Left. And the New Left took a different tack, saying exactly that. You, we're communists, we're radicals. But instead of organizing where the Communist Party had organized before, in working class places where production was going on, a lot of things moved to students and universities and cities. And you should have strikes, student strikes happen, but a student strike is very different than shutting down a strike that shuts down industry. It's not as effective. But even beyond that, the demonstrations because of that focus, the demonstrations turned into the be-all, end-all. We're having a demonstration. Let's get ourselves out on the street. Everybody lift their voice. As long as we lift our voice, that's freedom. That's, express. And even radicals were putting that forward. And it wasn't true. It was the first time in history you had people saying the the students are the revolution, and it historically was not true. Only historical connection to that was at the same time the Cultural Revolution in China, right? And that was them saying the revolution that you had isn't really real yet. So people focused on this spectacle, like, here are these demonstrations. You had things happening at the same time. We hear a lot about the hippie movement, the Summer of Love, but that was an answer to radicals that were there at the time. Whereas at the beginning, the free speech movement, when they did this, that was victory, saying that we have to do something. There's victory. They changed that to meaning peace, but it meant victory. It came from I forget who, but World War II or something like that, right? Anyway, so you had this confluence of radicals now more focused on students and cities, and now more focused on spectacle. And if you're focusing on students and saying that that's what needs to be done, you're going to create professors that are radical. You're going to create, and what can we do when you're also going to create artists whose goal is to make art that basically says we should keep saying stuff, right? To write things that says we should keep saying stuff, right? And you have art and academia, a lot of it being produced by people that are otherwise radical. And I would even include myself in some of this, that basically puts forward the idea that the truth will set us free. No time in history has that been proved to be as right now, right? So we have art that isn't talking about how power works, and I think and isn't trying to influence people to get involved in class struggle, because the answer that's there is not just, let's say even if you were to be like, I'm going to look at Star Wars as my thing. It's not just putting a bomb where empire is. It has to do with knowing where the main contradiction under capitalism is and where our power lies, and and where the basis of power for those in power are, and that has to do with capital. And we can control capital. By we, I mean the working class. Whether I'm in it or not anymore is not the point, but the working class can wield power if they can withhold labor, right? And not only artists, but the left in general has, until recently, and this is what I'm saying, until recently, because I think this has changed, but until recently has stayed away from a radical imagining of a labor movement to build into a mass militant radical labor movement that can use the withholding of labor as a strategy and tactic for first policy change and reform and building into a revolutionary movement. But I will say very recently, and by very, I mean last 8 to 6 years, maybe 10 years, there have been definitely huge exceptions to that, and radicals actually organizing in labor in larger ways and in ways that are making strides in that. And we're seeing, because of that, we're seeing a sea change in how people view what we can do.
So I feel like it would be maybe glib, but one could say, like, watch your movies too and be like, all right, that's the truth. Great, I feel free. But what you're trying to do partly, I think, it seems to me, is actually depict the possibility of working class movement and organizing.
Yes, yeah. I want to get people to join organizations that organize on the job. Uh-huh. And that seems very specific and like, oh, it's, this one little thing, but it's right now it's really important that happens, because that's where power is, right? That doesn't mean to not write things or to not make art or anything like that, but in order to even ask the right questions in our art, we have to be involved in those campaigns. We have to be involved in those movements, because then we understand what, having a conversation with someone about getting involved in a campaign, and said campaign changes their life, whether they're involved or not. Like, if you join this, you have a risk of losing your livelihood, you have a risk, or you have a risk of changing it immensely. If you don't join it, you also are risking losing your livelihood or it being better. Those sorts of conversations are different than just the larger "what should things be" sort of conversations. Right. And it guides things for me aesthetically. Like, I have friends that make art that for the most part we agree on a lot of stuff, but I think because they're like influenced by punk more than they are influenced by actually being involved in organizations, then they're like, it's all about anger, right? And just from the things that I've been involved in, I've seen that doesn't make people want to do things. That sometimes leads to frustration. And maybe in one point things can be like explosive, but it does. What I've realized is what makes people want to get involved is the possibility of winning, and is a strategy, and that possibility laid out by some sort of strategy, some sort of possible steps to take, and that's what gets people wanting to do it. And and I would say, like, Sorry to Bother You is probably my most clear in that sense, compared to my music. And it's also, like, for me, demonstrated itself to be the most effective as piece of art that I've had. So I've always had people come up to me and be like, your music really inspired me, this or that. And a couple times it'll be like it made me seek out an organization or this or something. But from 2020 to maybe 2023 or something, there was the biggest strike wave that the U.S. had seen since the 70s. And during that, I got several messages and calls that told me things like, oh, we were trying to get our store to go on strike, grocery store to go on strike. And people were pretty skeptical and didn't seem like it was going to happen. We showed Sorry to Bother You, and everybody voted to strike, right?
There you go. Okay.
Like a lot of those iterations. One was one that was unfortunate. It was like, oh, we do telemarketing, and we do it from home. And, I had everybody watch Sorry to Bother You, and everybody went on strike. But I'm like, you do it from home. It's like, you don't have so they definitely lost. Yeah. But, that one person told me a story. It was like in Baltimore, there was this job site that were voting to have a union. And the organizers were also like, we don't know which way it could go. We might win, but it might be close. But somebody else who was there that wasn't one of the organizers, right before the show of hands, said, Equisapiens, let's be out. And then everybody laughed, and every single person raised their hand. So those sorts of things.
This actually gets me right toward the next connection I wanted to make, which is I was talking with my podcasting students about some questions that we wanted to ask you. And someone had a question about how colorful your use of color in I Love Boosters, and watching the trailer, it's very colorful. And I think that there's a connection there with like aesthetics, but also just like with fun, in the sense that, I mean, this whole sort of like, we just got a great little brief history of the left in the 20th century, which I
well, like I said, it's also, you can shoot holes in it because
sure.
Yeah.
But it was a good sort of overarching view of one way of looking at that trajectory.
Yeah.
But the movies are really fun too, and I think that there's something also connected to organizing about how much fun there is. And whether we want to use the word fun, whether we want to think about style and the enjoyment of style, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I first got involved in a discipline party in 1986. And some of the leaders of that party were set in their 70s. So,
did you say a discipline party?
A disciplined revolutionary revolutionary party, progressive labor party.
Okay.
And some of the leaders of that party were in their 70s at the time. For me at the time, I was 15, and if you were 26, 25, you were old, right? So, but these were people who had been around and had been communists since the 20s, right? And one including an old Russian woman that knew people that were part of the Russian Revolution, things like that. So they were all the funniest people I knew, right? They were all like people that knew how to talk to people, and and it was because you had to be like you make yourself be that person, and I wasn't that person. And not necessarily make yourself be funny, but force yourself to talk to people, force yourself to connect to people, because it's what has to be done. One of the people that weren't as old as that, but it was this British dude named Pat Ryle, and he would always say, "How you gonna get a bloke to go on strike with you if you can't have a pint with him, right?" And and so I think what I realized later, that the jokes were really analysis, right? You're saying something. It wasn't always that. It was about different things, but you're talking about these contradictions, and the contradiction. What does ridiculous mean, right? It's you're looking at these heightened contradictions, and things shouldn't be that way, right? That's the ridiculousness of things. And what a good joke is often doing is heightening contradiction, and talking about a thing you already knew, but highlighting a thing that you maybe hadn't thought about before. So it's usually if somebody tells a good joke, just a stand-up comedian, it's not something, they're not talking about something you don't know about. They're talking about that thing, but in highlighting a thing that you didn't think about before. Also, what was definitely imparted to me through just seeing this, that it was about fun. What we want to build is a world where we have time for that, where we're not having to work 20 hours a day and not spend time with friends and family. And, so it has to do with all of these things. And I think early on with my music, I kind of discovered that. And it wasn't like I went into it knowing that, because I definitely think at first some of the people that I tried to imitate, they weren't like that. Like I think I was like imitating Ice Cube and Chuck D and all these folks, and who were very serious in their own way about things.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I was trying to make quote unquote good lyrics. And a good lyric is also something often that does that thing. It like skips over like swaths of theory and does this thing that you didn't think it would do, but has this connection. It's making these connections, and then people go, ooh, it's not abstract, and it's not just the next thing that's obvious. It's this other thing over here, and you put it together, and that sort of feeling is like what I was going for. And it wasn't until like my third album when a friend of mine was like, "Yeah, you do that funny shit." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And it would be all these things because I'd have these concepts that I wanted to do.
Yeah, you're trying to heighten that contradiction.
Yeah. And so I think that's what it is like you want to create a world that feels like how people feel when they're at a good party, right? They feel community, they feel love, they feel like they're part of something.
Boots, thank you so much for coming to the
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
When you go to the mall, you expect to see chains like Hot Topic, Foot Locker, Old Navy, a food court with pizza slices and soft pretzels. But here in Bloomington, if you walk through Target into the College Mall and then turn left, you'll see a place that sells local art. It's big, 6 galleries. It's called Pillar Arts, and it's an outgrowth of the Arts Alliance of Greater Bloomington. They run this shop in the mall, and they also recently took over By Hand Gallery. That's the long-running shop in Fountain Square downtown. They took it over when its founders decided it was time for them to move on. I walked through the gallery with Carol Rhodes. She's the president of Pillar Arts, and Vice President Henry Leck.
The piano room has a grand piano and 4 walls of art.
Good to mention that this was the laser tag room, and it was all blue, orange, and yellow. And there were also racks that held women's underwear. All of those had to be removed, and the painting is now neutral.
The piano is played almost on a daily basis by a very accomplished pianist, which imparts a real sense of class and, welcoming atmosphere.
Also should mention that just in this gallery alone, there's abstract art over here, there's watercolor, there's photography, there are oil paints, traditional oil paints and more avant-garde oil painting. You'll notice everything on the walls is original art, and then there are prints that are available in racks and also cards.
I'm Carol Rhodes. I am current president of Pillar Arts. Actually, Pillar Arts is the DBA of Arts Alliance of Greater Bloomington.
The DBA?
Doing business as. So the actual corporation is Arts Alliance of Greater Bloomington, and we are doing business as Pillar Arts.
I'm Henry Leck. I'm the vice president of the board and past president, and a retired professor, I should say.
That doesn't hurt to know also.
An oil painter.
And an oil painter, yes.
And you are a watercolor painter?
Colorist. Yeah.
If we could start with the history of the organization, which I think goes back at least 15 years, right?
About 12 years.
12 years. Okay.
It was an outgrowth of an organization that had existed before called the Bloomington Area Arts Council. And that organization ran the Waldron and the Busker Chumley, and because of the burden of running those organizations, fell short and dissolved. And in response to that, the artists of the community said, well, we really need an organization that's made up of artists. And they were very specific about making sure that the various genres of art were represented, such as dance and theater and music and visual arts, etc. So this group was formed called the Arts Alliance of Greater Bloomington. With that, the group got us a rental space in the mall, and it was called Art Beat, and it was near where the Macy's store is. And then, of course, COVID hit, and it was closed. So following COVID, we moved to another location, which was next to Foot Locker, and that was called the Arts Alliance Center. And that was very successful until there came a time when they had a renter who could pay higher commercial rates. And so, according to our lease, we were evicted. But they graciously allowed us to look at other spaces. And the one that came up was a large space that is the former Victoria's Secret space. And so we moved there, and in a matter of 6 weeks, remodeled the space and opened it into a 6-gallery plus performance area.
Where did the name Pillar Arts come from?
back when we had the Arts Alliance Center, there was a logo for Arts Alliance of Greater Bloomington, which was in cursive script and had a heart. And we had a number of outside consultants say, your logo is dated, and it gives the impression that you're older people, because young people don't use cursive anymore, and it looks folky with the little heart on it. So our board decided, well, let's think about redesigning the logo. So there was a task force. We brought in marketing people and looked at the logo and said, well, wait a minute, it's Arts Alliance of Greater Bloomington. That's way too many words to put into a logo. So let's just call it Arts Alliance. Oh, no, there are a million of those. So maybe we need to not only think about redoing the logo, but rebranding the organization. So we had on our board at the time a fellow named Ryan Irwin, who's done a lot of rebranding, like in Hopscotch Coffee and various places like that in town, done a lot of work in town. And finally, after spending a lot of time whittling down words, he came up with the word pillar, because it means collaborative, supportive work. And that's what we do. We collaborate with other organizations, with artists, and we help support. And that's what pillars do, is support. So the board thought about it. We decided, okay, Pillar Arts it's going to be. And we redesigned the logo and rebranded the whole organization.
So the mall has always been the only physical location. I mean, by hand is its own thing, but in terms of this pillar and art beat. So you can't really compare it to being somewhere else, but has it seemed like it's been a good place to be in terms of like getting business? I feel like malls don't have the kind of the energy or cachet, I think, that they once had.
You're absolutely correct about that. The traffic in the mall is not what it was 10 years ago. People now shop online and various things. But, we are also at the far end of the mall, which makes it a little bit challenging because we're not right in the middle of the food court area. But you know what? People are discovering us, and they're coming. We've had very, very good month of December in both locations.
In the Arts Alliance Center in the mall, in terms of at least 2D art, we do more sales of prints and cards than original art, although we have plenty of original art and it does sell. And we insist on the 2D art being original, with having some there. We're not just a shop of prints. We are an artist gallery.
So let's move to the Gallery B.
Great.
You notice here there's Rose Brenner, who's one of our artists, who's a greeter today. Our artists run the space. And in this space, which is a little different, you start to see jewelry and glass work and then traditional portrait art as well. It should be mentioned that all through these 6 galleries, the floor is marble and it's all in a black and white decor. Black cream, yeah. And there's a lot of space, so the art gets to breathe, and you can look at individual artists without being avalanched by all the art that's around it.
And that's Pillar Arts. Tyler, you stopped by recently.
Yeah, I did. I stopped by, and I was surprised by how big it was and how much stuff they have in there. There are so many pieces. There's so many different artists. There's a lot of variety in that space.
There is. It's a really pleasant, dignified space.
Yeah.
Which I think is what they're going for. I couldn't help think about what I might do if I was running an art space in a mall.
Make it less dignified?
I appreciate the dignity of the place, but I might play a little bit with the fact that it was in a mall.
Yeah. So like what?
I'd bring in a claw machine where you can get art.
I support the
Sort of
art
like
claw
the vending
machine.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. What might you do?
What would I bring in there?
What would you bring in?
Well, I would go ahead and lean into the Victoria's Secrets thing.
Oh, yeah?
And be like, all of the paintings are in the juicy room. and then all the glasswork in the lingerie room. And I don't know why, but that's just my gut.
I did think, they talked too about how it had been a laser tag space as well. And I might also kind of keep some of the vestiges of those spaces, have this sort of like sense of layers of all the different things that maybe the history of the place.
Like a wall that's just peeling back and you can see all the different history, all the different things that have been in that spot at one time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
the
I
colors,
like that.
Some of the different colors.
There's probably going to be a lot of pink.
But also black and, I don't know, yellow, neon, green,
day
something.
glow.
Day glow.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Leo just jumped in and suggested pinball machines designed by artists.
Oh, designed by artist or themed, like a Van Gogh
Or themed, maybe
pinball
that was
machine.
what Leo meant.
Yeah. The Escher pinball machine being really problematic.
The ball never comes back. You just watch it go over and over.
You have no control over the
Right.
Escher pinball machine.
Anyway, yeah, those are a few things that I might do. I like your ideas.
Yeah, yours too. I agree. It's a really lovely space, but it's unusual that it's in the mall. And
Yeah.
I advocate the leaning in.
Yeah, I would play with that. That's not what they're doing, though. And maybe if I want that other thing, I just need to call up Simon College Mall.
Yeah, if you really want to do this, there's a Hollister. There's a former Hollister you can move right into.
I'm looking forward to that. But you should also check out all the local art at
Yes,
Pillar Arts.
there's tons of cool stuff in there, and it's also, honestly, a great place to get gifts.
It really is. They're doing a good job. More nice work after this.
This is Nice Work. I'm Tyler Lake.
And I'm Danny William.
And Danny, have you ever used a ham radio?
No, but I am super curious about that whole community. I know it has to be more than conspiracy theorists who live in an RV in the desert like in the movies, but I don't really know anything about the radios or that whole world.
Well, it is strange, nerdy, and technical, the ham radio scene. Luckily, Nice Work contributor Leo Pies went to find out all about it.
We very much are a band of independent geeks, nerds, whatever you want to call us, aficionados of communications.
Is this thing working? Can you hear me?
Have you heard of amateur radio or ham radio? It's not like traditional radio like the one you get in your car. Here, radio refers to the radio waves and signals, and ham radio enthusiasts use them to connect with one another. Ham radio is a hobby where people build antennas and experiment with radio signals. These radios do not rely on cellular or internet connection, so they're very reliable during events like natural disasters. And ham radios can reach across the globe, can reach astronauts in the International Space Station, and can even bounce signals off the moon and back, so they can cover a lot of ground. Here, the Bloomington Amateur Radio Club attracts enthusiasts to test their limits when it comes to ham radios. As President Tom Henderson explained, the club is for all STEM lovers.
There are a lot of us, especially in the broadcast industry and the electronics industry, who are hams. We have a lot of software developers, software engineers, coders, systems engineers. I come out of a system engineering background myself. I got into ham radio as a kid, but then I got fascinated by computers. In my retirement, I decided that I would get back into radio and have a good time and try and ally the radio community.
The club has courses, seminars, experiments, and can even help you get your license to operate ham radios. There are many different types of licenses to operate a ham radio, and the club prepares members to take the FCC test and can even test people, as Tom himself is an FCC volunteer examiner.
Amateur radio seems daunting for many, but the initial license is actually not that difficult to obtain. A lot of people from many walks of life get into amateur radio both for fun, but also for its practical education and a variety of different communications methods. The beauty of this is that we are hobbyists, number one, but we also like to do this cheaply. And we have ham fests, we have swap meets and what have you, where we swap gear and help each other practically to become better operators, to achieve more in different directions. But it's a pretty wide playing field, and it's a very open one.
The club also trains people to become storm spotters, which are people who learn to watch the weather and report via ham radios to the National Weather Service and help with communication local events like county fairs.
One of the things that we do is a skills practice event the end of last weekend in every June, where we get together in a park. We build 3 sophisticated ham radio stations running either solar power or anything but grid power. And we get on the air for 24 hours and make as many contacts in as many different interesting ways as we can, whether it's across the country, internationally, satellites, bounce it off the moon. All of those sorts of things can happen. So we're trying to bring our readiness skills online, but also ally the community, educate operators, and provide resources to each other because we each come at this from a slightly different angle. We've learned how to help ally each other and also point to resources that we can use that will help them be successful.
The club is open to all ages. As Tom said, the youngest member is 9 years old and the oldest is 94 years old. The club meets once a month, and you can find more information on their website, bloomingtonradio.club.
So we have inventors among us, we have thinkers, we have a lot of doers, and it's communications. We have a lot of yackers too. I'll shut up.
For nice work, I'm Leo Pice.
Wow, it kind of seems like they have a global community of technical experts and tinkerers. But do you have anything more local and maybe even a bit arty for me?
I do. Nice Work contributor Carl Templeton talked with artist and musician Aaron Toby about local art. Does that fit the bill?
Yeah, that'll do nicely.
Erin has always been a creative person. She's been in bands since she was 16, finding any outlet she can to express her creativity. She moved to Bloomington in 2003 because of her connections in the local music scene. Years later, she found herself painting a mural outside Hopscotch Coffee, which her husband Jeff Grant and her founded. A few years after that, the public library reached out about a mural commission. She took a chance on it.
I don't know, it felt so good. It felt so good. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the large scale of it. I enjoyed the meditative aspect of it, just kind of listening to audiobooks and painting, because it just would these projects take weeks often. So there's something about it that was just really yeah, this is cool.
Aaron Toby is a visual artist, painting murals, illustrations, and graphic design all around Bloomington. She also plays in a few bands such as Brenda's Friend and Full Sun. As a mural artist, the process is a very collaborative one, both between her and the city of Bloomington.
There's a lot of kind of back and forth, in specific projects that feels like we're thinking about what is this doing? What is this place? Where is this going to exist and what purpose does it serve? How is it supporting the environment and the people around it? So and then it's also about making connections with different clients, whether it's the library or Wonder Lab or Secretly Group in town. It's kind of, for me personally, it's kind of weaving together different people for me as an artist, kind of getting building these relationships and also kind of thinking about visually, the visual environment and how to enrich it in a way that makes it more activated. I don't think about it that way. Pleasant, fun, enjoyable, have more life and personality. I mean, that's kind of my goal as an artist, is to just make things more fun and interesting visually.
One of her murals sits in an alleyway next to Wonder Lab, between Kirkwood and 4th Street. It's called The Scale of Science. It's half a city block long, showcasing vibrant green landscapes, and it takes you through the journey of the magnification of a leaf. At the end of the mural sits a girl looking curiously into a microscope.
So this piece in that alley was created as a commission by this center at IU in the Department of Chemistry called the Center for Single Entity Nanochemistry and Nanocrystal Design. It's a very specific chemistry working group that works on really, really small nanotechnology. I don't know what they call it, but so this center at IU was looking for art that represented kind of visually and in an accessible way the work that they do, kind of looking at teeny things and how they interact with huge things. And so I had to kind of come up with this concept that kind of illustrated the work that they did, which was very kind of technical and scientific, but it was just really fun and a really interesting challenge. And the image is kind of like a child looking in a microscope, and then you go into a cell and it goes deeper into the cell, and then it zooms back. It's kind of looking at it, you might not understand necessarily the whatever the concept. I really enjoyed, it was collaborating with these folks at IU and the city who kind of helped support it financially. I don't know. It was just a cool kind of confluence. And I appreciated that IU was something at IU was interested in bringing like art beyond the, into the community, like into the city in a way that wasn't specifically tied to the university. I thought that was really awesome.
For Erin, she couldn't imagine doing any type of work without community. It plays a huge role both in the creative process and the impact she wants to make. For Nice Work, I'm Carl Templeton. The music in the story is of Erin's band, Brenda's Friend.
Nice Work is a production of WFIU, WTIU, and Indiana Public Media. You can find us at ipm.org. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
If you like smart conversations, you'll like The State of Inquiry.
It's not just ChatGPT.
Marital satisfaction, how memory changes with age, social media or to TikTok or to influencers.
Strife, discord and conflict,
enjoyment, motivation,
cascading effects on rural communities.
Safe drinking water.
What can we do to deter changes?
It looks pretty, but it doesn't mean it's good.
The State of Inquiry, wherever you find podcasts and at ipm.org.